Be seated. For my entire life, I've had a hard time sleeping. Not falling asleep, but that thing where you wake up in the middle of the night and immediately want to solve every problem, real or imagined, in the world in your own life. And this happened to me last night, and over the years, I've developed these little tricks with how I try to deal with that. I'll listen to books on tape and try to drift off to sleep with that. Sometimes I'll go to Book TV, C-SPAN's Book TV, their website, and listen to one of the authors speak. And this is what I did last night at 3 a.m. Problem is, I got really interested in what the author was saying, and it was a 3-hour deal. And the author was Sebastian Junger. If you've ever come across him, he wrote The Perfect Storm, about a movie, and a movie was made about that. But more importantly, he spent most of his career as a journalist and war correspondent. And he did a documentary on troops that were fighting in the Konoha Valley in Afghanistan called Restrepo. It got nominated for an Oscar. But he just wrote a book called Tribe. And the book starts out in this way. Human beings don't mind hardship. In fact, they thrive in it. What they mind is not feeling necessary. Modern society has perfected the art of making people not feel necessary. And this must end. He wrote this book called Tribe about how human beings through all of history until very recently lived in tribal societies. And these tribal societies were structured in such that every single member of the tribe had a function and a purpose, and they knew exactly what that was. They didn't live as an end to themselves. The sort of individualism that we have in our world was unknown to them because they lived for the benefit of each other. And he noticed that this was being exactly mimicked in the life of military men and women who were at war. That they would, in a platoon of about 40 people, basically they were mimicking a tribe. And that each person within that unit knew exactly what their purpose was and what they were to do for the benefit of the whole. And what he noted was that suicide rates that we know about with our soldiers that are coming back from war, that these suicides weren't happening in the midst of the war. It was only when they were coming back. And as he looked through human history, he noticed that suicide rates in tribal societies are dramatically lower, and he wondered what it was, therefore, about our contemporary world that were giving people a sense of despair in their life. And his hypothesis is that these men and women who were at war and they knew exactly what their purpose was and they were doing something for the benefit of the whole, that when they lost that, it was so dramatic to them that overwhelmingly they go into depression. And he says that in ways that we're not even aware of, that we're all suffering from this because in our modern contemporary world that has us atomized from each other, that tells us that the individual is the height of everything, that teaches us to live only life for our own desires and pursuits of individual happiness, and that we live in this immense amount of luxury that we have, that the fact that we're not giving our lives to the benefit of something more is literally killing us. And his solution in some way is that we have to go back to this tribal understanding that our life has meaning when we give ourselves to the benefit of something beyond ourselves. We have 9 children going to be baptized, and sitting right here and all of these wonderful family pictures in the making that are going to happen surely today. This is a great moment in the life of each and every one of these families. Each of these kids is a promise. Their lives are filled with possibility, and part of what's going on here today, of course, is that milestone in life where we're just celebrating their lives. And of course, there's going to be years of education and all kinds of effort that's put into making them into the human beings that they hopefully will be in success and all the other markers of our age that show a life that is well lived. I know this as a dad. I would give anything for the benefit of my children, and indeed, we probably give too much to our kids, but we want so much for them to be able to follow their dreams and to live into all that life has to offer for them. And yet, when I think about Sebastian Junger's hypothesis that we can have everything in the world, that we can have every mark of success, and yet if our lives are never geared towards others, if they never have a purpose beyond the pursuit of individual glory or success, that they will be lives that are empty. I know this from my own profession. For the people who come into my office needing help are very oftentimes, by all of the markers of the world, incredibly successful people, and yet somewhere within their lives they can get off a course, they can live for no particular reason at all. And I know that the times within my own life that this has been the case is when I have lost a sense of feeling necessary to something bigger than me. We're gathered on All Saints Sunday, a Sunday that celebrates those people who gave of their lives so that we could be here today. And as I mentioned a little while ago, I invited people to bring pictures from their lives of the saints that filled up their life. I started it out yesterday with that picture, the first one there. There's actually two, and you can see it afterwards if you're so inclined. The bigger one is of my wife's parents' marriage, and her grandparents, who are no longer with us, are in that picture, as well as her father, who died tragically at age 50. The little picture in there is of me and my friend Andy Mock. Andy Mock in this picture and I are celebrating the fact that I'm about to get married. This is the party for my upcoming marriage, and Andy Mock was to be my best man. He was a childhood friend, very, very close person in my life. I was 21, had just gone to seminary, and Andy was 22 and about to graduate college when, a month before my wedding, I got a call from my father letting me know that Andy had died suddenly in his sleep the night before. Now, Andy, his parents, loved him, and they gave everything to him, and they wanted him to grow up and be successful and have all the things that life can give, just like we want for these children. And yet, having died at age 22, he never really had a chance to fulfill all of that. And yet, here he is in this church today with me holding him up as a saint, because the truth is that somewhere along the way, Andy learned that his life was not only supposed to be lived for him. And really the way that he came about this was because of his deep, abiding faith in Jesus of Nazareth. Because he wanted in his own life to model the ways of Jesus, which most certainly are about living life for the benefit of others. And as Shelley and I were dealing with the fact that I felt called into the ministry, and how differently that was going to be, different that was going to be from the life that we had dreamed and planned for ourselves, Andy was instrumental in that period of holding up the way of Jesus to us and giving us the backbone and the courage to make this wild change in our lives so that I can stand before you today as a priest. And so I thank God every day, not only for Andy, and in fact, when we pray for the dead, you oftentimes, if you're paying attention, you'll see me mumble a name, and it's always Sunday after Sunday, 20-some-odd years later, Andy Mock. He did not get to live into all of the markers of success. He didn't even get to graduate college. All of that emphasis on him becoming who he's supposed to be, if that's all that his life was to be, his life would have been a failure. And yet he is a saint of the church because he lived his life for something other than himself. This past year I did a funeral for many people, but one in particular that stood out is Bill Robinson's funeral. And Bill was kind of a saint in his family, and I talked about what it means, therefore, to be a saint. Now, almost no one in this room would want to be described probably as being a saint. That would make you feel incredibly uncomfortable. And the person who would be like, oh yeah, I view myself as a saint, let me assure you, you're probably the last one we would pick if you would do that. And I'm sure that Bill was the same, but I told this story that I had heard somewhere along the way about a little girl who was asked in Sunday school, what makes someone a saint? And having spent many Sundays in a church like this with all of these stained glass windows where the light comes in and the colors bathe the church, and her remembering that these were the saints of the church, she told their Sunday school teacher, who asked who were the saints, she said, saints are the people who let the light in. And if you look at stained glass, it's often shards of glass. It's never, just kind of complete whole pieces. There's always little bitty pieces put together, fragments, like our lives, that are oftentimes full of shards that somehow would only fit together if there was a master designer and craftsman that puts them together, which we know God is. But somewhere, if we make ourselves available, God does piece us together and allows the light to come through us. These children are going into a world and going to be raised in a world that can be plenty filled with fear, with all the divisions of our world, with all the fissures in society, with all of the violence that's all around us. And that can make us afraid. That can make us just kind of hunker down. That can make us turn inward. And yet, on this All Saints Sunday, I think that we need to listen to the ways of the saints of God and the Christ who called each and every one of them, who said, if you want to save your life, then give it away. If you want to be whole, then find purpose in doing something for the benefit of others. We know, Sebastian Younger certainly taught me at 3 a.m, that the more that we turn towards ourselves, somehow the more lost we are. And yet the saints of God teach us that the more that we turn to others and give of our lives, that we will find our lives all of a sudden somehow made whole. And through us, the light can come in. So families, please come